Prepare yourselves for an absolutely tragic chapter of One Piece. But for now, we've got the silly cover page of chapter 1098 titled The Birth of Bonnie, which features Brook rocking out with an electric guitar powered by an electric eel. But written on Brook's pants, we have a message from Oda himself. This chapter's manuscript is unfinished. Sorry. This happens from time to time with other stories, but is certainly a rarity for this one. That being said, the art isn't bad at all. The contents though, you'll see. We kick things off at the Revolutionary Army's Baltigo headquarters. Their forces needed backup to handle the Toomey uprising in the South Blue, which had apparently taken a turn for the worst. Eva and his forces wouldn't be able to help out since they were stuck tending to the wounded at Goa. That's when Kuma responded. He planned on going by himself. Eva urged his friend not to be so reckless, adding that he's been like this ever since that day. All of a sudden, Kuma slammed down on the battlefield, surprising all the enemy forces with his staggering size. He thought of Ginny and how she had been captured. Kuma was now a man with nothing to lose. Over Denden Mushi, they received the dreadful news that Ginny had caught the eye of a celestial dragon. The sicko had apparently taken her on a world government ship with the intention of making her his bride. Ultimately, thanks to Kuma's contributions, the day was won for the people of Toomey. After 3 years of struggling, they had finally overthrown the leaders of their country thanks to the Revolutionary Army's help. Continuing to recall that previous event, the men over Denden Mushi cried as they admitted that the enemy took them by surprise. As the proper flag of the Revolutionary Army rose in the newly liberated country, the Marines quickly caught wind of the event. The rebels were considered to be heroes of the people. Kuma remembered Ginny's former comrades begging to be forgiven. After helping to save the country, Kuma contacted Dragon, letting him know that he'd worn himself out fighting and would be returning with a ship. As they sailed, he remembered how sorry those men were. It had now been close to 2 years since Ginny had been captured for the sake of becoming a celestial dragon's wife. As the sun's rays hit a certain ship, a baby named Bonnie cried, and a mother assumed that they were close to their destination. At headquarters, Kuma was told that there was an urgent call. Ginny was on the line. Her first words were very enthusiastic as she called out to Kumachi, telling him that she'd finally made it back to the surface of the world. But her tone soon shifted. The world nobles didn't want her around after she got sick, so she was thrown away. But she chose to consider it a stroke of luck. Kuma was stunned to hear that she's sick. She wanted to see all of them one final time, but this call would have to suffice as a goodbye, much to Eva's irritation. Kuma was in a panic, unsure of what Ginny was talking about. He wanted to know where she was since he'd be able to get there in an instant. He admitted to being afraid that he would never see her again. Ginny smiled but paused. She apologized to him once more. Unfortunately, she was already at death's door. She was happy to hear that he cares about her, but didn't want him to see her as she was. Kuma immediately turned to leave, and nobody could hold him back. He shoved his way through, already knowing that there was only one place she would go. Ginny mentioned how Kuma has a big heart to Dragon and Eva, and asked them to take care of him for her. Kuma poofed away without hearing her final words to him. She wanted Kumachi to know that she loves him, that she always has and always will.
Yeah.
Kuma returned to their Sorbet church home and demanded to know where Ginny was. All the old folks confirmed that she was here, but it was too late. Her condition took a turn for the worst when she was exposed to natural light. Her face and entire body had all turned blue in the sun, and her skin hardened like stone. Tears filled Kuma's eyes. He remembered all the wonderful times they'd shared together. Holding her, he questioned what could have possibly done this. He couldn't stop crying when he remembered her talking to him about getting married, wondering if it wouldn't make him happy. He held her close as he shook and cried. Ginny had used all the time she had left by exposing herself to the sun, and she did it to cross the ocean and make it home to them all for the sake of ensuring her baby's safety. Kuma looked at the child, who was also crying. He assured Ginny that she could rest in peace. He swore to raise Bonnie well. Kuma made sure to create a beautiful grave for the woman he loved. This is a cruel and unusual punishment, man. It's honestly sickening, but thankfully, brighter moments were ahead. Soon after, Kuma was being reprimanded by all the old folks at once. He was struggling to properly feed Bonnie and was being flooded by a ton of advice. They also insisted that Kuma be sure to place Bonnie's crib inside an iron cage to avoid crushing her in his sleep. Bonnie was being fed with a bottle that was even bigger than herself, but had no trouble finishing up. It was clear that she was going to be just as much of a glutton as her mother was, the memories of which made Kuma smile and cry tears of joy. Time continued to pass. Bonnie's first words were "Daddy," and Kuma couldn't stop crying. Bonnie was adorable and everyone loved her. Once she could handle solid foods, she had no trouble devouring a bunch. Whenever Kuma had business to tend to, he would leave her in the care of the old folks. Kuma spent all his free time with his daughter, but still fought hard alongside the Revolutionary Army. He even built the cage around Bonnie's bed that the old folks suggested. He also helped train Sabo once he joined the revolutionaries. But yet again, like everything else in Kuma's life, things took a bad turn. Strangely, Kuma had suddenly boarded up all the church's windows. When his friends came over to check on him, he told them to quickly close the door. Afterwards, Kuma showed them something that was below Bonnie's eye. It was a blue stone. This was the very same condition Ginny faced at the end of her life. In the present, this is exactly where Bonnie's piercing is. The future members of the Bonnie Pirates rushed to get a doctor and were thanked by Kuma. The first doctor was a total idiot that suggested that they take her out to see if sunlight is really the issue, which only pissed Kuma off. The next doctor was able to discern that it didn't seem to be white lead poisoning, Law's former illness, but apologized since she wasn't familiar with Bonnie's illness. In response to this, Kuma made the hard decision to quit the Revolutionary Army. He wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do or not, but he knew he needed to stay by her side. Dragon wasn't happy to see his friend leave, but understood since it's important to live life without regrets. So clearly, he doesn't regret leaving Luffy. At the very least, Dragon promised Kuma that they would make use of their contacts to get a hold of doctors all over the world to help Bonnie. And Kuma was very grateful. From there, we'd fast forward to 7 years ago when Bonnie was 5. It was already made clear with the timing of her birth, but here we finally know for certain that Bonnie is 12 years old in the present. 3 children were running for their lives, trying to get away from a vampire. Bonnie shouted that they should all stay out of the church while flipping the bird. They mocked her from the doorframe, knowing that she couldn't step out into direct sunlight. Holding a cross, the one in the middle dared the vampire to come any closer. He was sure that the holy cross would be her weakness. Bonnie delivered a flying kick to his head while pointing out how stupid he was. After all, they were already inside of a church. As the little boy ran away crying, she claimed to be coming after him, which immediately drew the attention of her ever-protective father. He begged her not to go outside, that even just standing near the doorway would be harmful to her. Bonnie did her best to console her worrisome father, telling him that she was just kidding, but he begged her not to even joke about something like that. She soon agreed since she doesn't like it when her dad gets sad and worried. He happily hugged her with tears streaming down his face since she was such a good kid, but she told him to stop being such a crybaby all the time. Although, Bonnie was still frustrated that the other kids were making fun of her face stones. Poking at them a bit, she wondered if they were really that strange. It's not like she can help it. She didn't ask to get sick after all. That's when Kuma rushed to her side, claiming that they were jewels. He told her that they were all just jealous because Bonnie had such pretty jewelry. This made the little girl laugh and smile brightly. Kuma added that he loves them. So now we know why she's called Jewelry Bonnie. While the two of them played with toys, Kuma asked his daughter where'd she like to go on a trip once she gets better. It didn't take long for Bonnie to come up with her answer. She asked him if he had ever heard about the legendary Sky Islands. Kuma couldn't believe that there were islands way up in the sky, but Bonnie insisted that it was true after reading about it in a book. Since they were so high up in the sky, she wondered if they might be able to see Nika there, knowing that it would make her dad really happy. To that, he began doing the Nika dance along with mimicking the drums of liberation. To him, it sounded like a grand adventure. He promised to take her there to celebrate her 20th birthday, but wondered where they should go for her 19th. Her answer to that was Fishman Island. But you already know how this story goes. Once Kuma starts having too much fun, Oda decides to crush him even more. Outside of the church, Kuma met with a doctor that confirmed that Bonnie's condition was a terminal one known as Sapphire Scale. Kuma asked the doctor to please keep his voice down. The doctor admitted that the condition is rarely seen these days. The blue stones on the body grow rapidly when exposed to any natural lighting from sources such as the sun or moon. But even if exposure is completely avoided, the disease would catch up to a person eventually. To put things bluntly, Bonnie had at best only another 5 years to live. Surviving to the age of 10 would be a miracle. There was no way to save her based on the world's current scientific understanding. These words rocked Kuma to his very core. Opening the door, he thought to himself how unfair their situation was. He wondered if there truly wasn't any possibility of a cure. Just then, Bonnie popped out to surprise him. Kuma was shocked since he thought she was asleep. But with a huge smile on her face, Bonnie told him that she heard everything. She was sure that he said it would all be over by her 10th birthday. Kuma feigned ignorance, claiming that he had no idea what she was talking about. But she was sure he said it. Although, seeing that he was crying, she wondered if she said something wrong. Kuma shakily began to speak to her. He admitted that the conversation she had overheard was about her illness. He called the doctor a fool for being told that her condition would continue as is until she's 10 years old. Bonnie wanted to know more, and Kuma told her that after hearing about such an appalling amount of time, he couldn't help but feel sad afterwards. But Bonnie's interpretation was very different. She was sure that it meant she'd be all better by the time she's 10. Overjoyed, she was sure that the two of them would be able to go on all the trips they talked about. Kuma realized that he had given her false hope, but couldn't stand to crush her spirit with the truth. So he played into it, happily proclaiming that once she's 10 years old, she will be cured. 1 year later, a total nightmare reoccurred in the Sorbet Kingdom as people cried out for Kuma to save them. The Tyrant King Bakori had returned and was as horrible as ever. The situation was similar to how it was 16 years ago. The Celestial Lapdog planned to split the country and cast away the poor. In fact, he was going to burn people inside their homes. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this is easily my least favorite chapter of One Piece ever. The Ginny stuff was just very uncomfortable to read. Outside the whole Sanji invisibility fruit thing, I can't remember ever having an actual issue with this story. Now, obviously there are terrible things in this world, and slavery is the furthest thing from pretty, but to reach berserk levels of depravity in a series that presents itself as mostly goofy, fun-loving adventures is a bit too off base for me. I seriously believe the story could have done without the Celestial Dragons lusting after anyone outside their society based on their whole superiority complex. And to make matters worse, the flashback is not over yet, so poor Kuma, man. But presumably, Kuma manages to save the Sorbet Kingdom again, resulting in the world government branding him as a Tyrant King. At some point, he'll leave with Bonnie and meet up with Dr. Vegapunk. We know that the Doctor has met her before the Egghead incident, and Vegapunk's scientific understanding is said to be hundreds of years beyond current standards, so that'll be a bit of hope to contrast that previous Doctor's statement. Bonnie's Devil Fruit is all about time, so maybe it acts as a cure in some capacity. We know that she lives past the age of 10 and has no trouble being in direct sunlight. Either way, although she's literally 12, by being able to change her age at will, she can go on all the wonderful adventures her and Kuma talked about. And likely to ensure her safety, Kuma decides to become the world government's weapon. Overall, I hope we can finish up this flashback as soon as possible. But of course, there are bound to be a bunch of different takes with this one, so I'm really curious how you guys feel about it. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.